in this bill, we typically find some reappropriation money related to the SAFE Act. Do you have any idea if that's in here again? It looks to us to be on page 368 or so.
368. Yes, question?
Yep. Is it there on page 368?
Oh.
Funding related to the SAFE Act?
Yeah, well, I have something in front of me and it's equivalent.
That's equivalent? Okay. So the number that you show, is it approximately 4.6 million remaining of the original 80.74 million?
No. I'll find his page. What was your page number?
368, lines 26 through 33.
Because the SAFE Act does have, not relying to this, but there are no new capital appropriations in the budget. 20.7 million is reappropriated in it to support the technology-related components of the SAFE Act. And to date, we've spent 12.8 million has been spent to develop the assault weapon registration, mental health reporting, ammunition-only dealer registration, and the pistol permit processing components of the SAFE Act.
12 million spent thus far of the 20? Or
To date, yes, has been spent. No. Yeah, the 20.7. There is now remaining $7.9 million.
Okay, so 7.9.
Yes, that remains.
Any money been spent on the database?
Can't tell. I can't answer that question.
Okay. The 12 or so million that's been spent was spent mostly where? Do we have a breakdown of that?
No.
Okay.
But what is spent to develop assault weapon registration, so they were dealing with the registration, mental health reporting, ammunition-only dealer registrations, and pistol permit processing components of the SAFE Act. So as you can see, those were the things I would assume it's statewide.
Was it spent with certain outside companies? Was it spent throughout the state? I'm not quite sure how we spent that money. Was somebody developing the database?
We did a lot with consultants. They used consultants to work on this stuff because a lot of this is brand new as to what we're doing. So they've been getting consultants and they're using that.
Well, can you give me the name of some of the consultants? Because I have to say that myself and Assemblyman Lopez and Assemblyman DiPietro, other colleagues, have brought this up year after year after year, asking specifically where that money had been spent and what companies it had been spent with, but we never get an answer to that. But now we're being told that it was spent on some consultants. We must have some list somewhere of where that 12 million bucks went.
What I've just heard is that we have the same problem you just mentioned. We're not getting anything, any answers.
Who has that list?
The government.
Who wrote the checks?
The state controller.
So the state comptroller should be able to provide this body with a list of every dollar that's been spent on the SAFE Act, as I understand it. He's the one writing the checks, right?
Yes, probably.
Who signed the contracts with the consultants? The comptroller? Do we know?
No, we don't know.
We don't know. Okay. All right. Denny, thank you. Just moving on to, my colleague did a great job of hitting on SUNY Poly, but I do have a couple of questions on that. SUNY Poly is largely being dismantled and largely fallen apart, and the deals have fallen apart rapidly since the indictments and corruption charges and upcoming trials. But yet in this budget, we're looking at another 200, what is it, 207
$7.5 billion.
207.5 million,
Yeah.
which is the same as the governor and 207.5 million more than last year.
Yeah.
So we're supporting, what it says is this funding will support ongoing SUNY Poly projects that create or retain jobs. Okay, included but not limited to advanced photonics research and manufacturing, AIM photonics, and the Global 450. Many of those have already fallen apart. Global 450 certainly has fallen apart. So I'm not sure why we're appropriating $207.5 million of taxpayer money to projects that have fallen apart. So I don't know what we're funding if there are no projects.
But there are projects.
They're not. Global 450 fell apart.
When you say fell apart,
It's not even moving forward as far as I know.
well,
The chip fab plant at SUNY Utica, SUNY Poly Utica, they pulled out around Thanksgiving last year. So I'm not sure if we can't detail where $207 million is going. I don't know why we're spending it.
well, I would say this, then the money is there, and if they're trying to, they may have had a problem, which sometimes occurs when you have the situation they had, and because of that, there may be reasons why they're falling down, but maybe they still want to try to save it, and so we're giving them a chance to do that.
Well, but when I understand that's kind of the same philosophy of Startup New York, which is keep throwing good money down a hole, but I don't know where this money's going. There has to be some reason to put $207 million on the table, and you have to have a place to spend it, and it can't just be sitting there on the chance that maybe somebody's going to breathe life back into these, because one of the companies has already
Mr. Butler,
pulled out
why
their
don't you
back in
rise?
Europe.
I'm wondering if my colleague, Mr. McLaughlin, would yield for just a quick question.
Sure thing.
Mr. McLaughlin yields.
Certainly, Steve, I appreciate much of what you're saying, and I understand the message, but I don't know if you're aware, on the Marcy Nano site facility, there has just been a recent announcement about a new project coming in there. In fact, I think some of the employees have already gone into the building and are already there working.
Yep.
It is my understanding.
Yep.
So,
I'm aware.
I agree that the way this process is handled and has been handled is faulty, but I just wanted to make my colleagues aware that there is an ongoing project that shows great promise there. Even though the former project, I concede, with Global Foundries fell apart.
I would.
Yeah,
I agree.
and may I finish his sentence? The executive was responsible. He has gotten new companies and are bringing them in there. So that's why he's putting them together.
Okay, let me just ask Mr. Butler,
Yeah, you
what's
can-
the size of the Marcy project compared to the original project?
Certainly, the new project is a lesser scale.
Considerably.
But nonetheless, it's coming there with the prospects of future growth.
Understood.
Yeah.
But thank you.
Yes, it doesn't match the scale of the
And-
first project.
And that's my problem, is that we can't necessarily throw $200 million at a considerably, maybe 10% of the original size of what the, whatever it is. It's considerably,
But-
markedly smaller. So I just would like to know, I don't know how you justify $207 million for some projects. That one got a little bit of a,
Mr. Brindisi, why do you rise?
Colleague Mr. McLaughlin, yield for 1 second.
come back in 30 seconds. Let me
Miss
finish my thought.
McLaughlin will
Stand right
consider your
back up,
request
though.
later.
Go ahead, I'll yield. Go ahead.
No, Mr. McLaughlin yields.
Go ahead.
Thank you, sir. I just do want to clarify, and perhaps you're not aware, in terms of the the SUNY Poly projects in the Utica area, there are two separate projects that are addressed in this capital budget, not part of the $270 million you are talking about. The first is the Quad C project, which is a company, a German company called Danfoss, which is now locating in the building that is on the SUNY Poly campus there in Marcy. That is expected to create 300 jobs, and as my colleague, Mr. Butler, had stated earlier, those are starting to fill into the building. The other project is the Marcy Nano Center, which has money appropriated in this budget, which is expected to bring more jobs to the area, and we continue to market that site and have much interest in that site by many semiconductor companies from around the world.
Well, thank you, Mr. Brindisi. And now that I have three of you up, can any of
So,
you...
1 minute, Mr. Ra, why do you rise?
All right. Yeah.
You're just standing. Okay,
But
all right.
now that three of you are up, Mr. O'Donnell just walked in. I don't know if he's going to
I've
ask
got
me to yield
three
too.
people up. Whose turn is it now, Mr. Butler?
But I understand what you're saying, and I certainly want to see jobs. We all do. But I would ask any of the three of you together, can you come up with $207.5 million worth of where these projects are going? And I don't think we can, but I appreciate that, of course, we want to see the jobs come in. My point is that I think we should have earmarks for these and not just saying, well, we're hopeful that jobs come in, but certainly we're glad that somehow they put a defibrillator on one of the SUNY projects and somehow breathed life back into Frankenstein and got about 10% of what the original jobs were supposed to be. And also the fact, but of course, there's the promise of future jobs, which is what we see, quite frankly. But
Well, I would just add, Mr. McLaughlin, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think the process has been flawed, continues to be flawed, but I just wanted my colleagues again to understand that there is some life at
Absolutely.
the SUNY campus
And I
Marcy.
applaud both of the members for standing up for their district, as I would as well, of course. I guess that my point remains, though, but certainly love to see a little bit more life. I'd like to see more, of course. We'd like to see those 4,000 or 5,000 jobs promised under Startup New York. I guess I just have some problems and concerns when I'm reading on our sheet here about projects, not the ones that we've just discussed, but projects here that have completely fallen by the wayside, and we still seem to be funding them. That's problematic to me. I'd much rather, if we're going to spend money, spend it on Marcy, where we actually have some life coming in, rather than like Global 450, which seems to have fallen apart completely. That would be my point there. But the one last question, Denny.
Yes.
SUNY Poly owes about $475 million to bondholders, and they rely on rent at the SUNY Poly campuses to pay those bondholders. As these deals have fallen apart, struggled, not come to fruition the way they should, is there any indication SUNY Poly is going to be using any of this $200 million to pay bondholders?
No, I don't think so.
Is there any indication that SUNY Poly is running into any problem meeting their bond obligations?
Not that I've heard, but they wouldn't tell me anyway.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think they tell me either, for sure. Any idea when those bonds are due? They're probably rolling. They're probably
No, I would think that they're covered, and that's probably one of the reasons, because that's one of the more important things that these colleges, these universities, are taking advantage of these young people that they get in their businesses, and they do well by doing what they do. In other words, what has made upstate safe or better or good is the fact that they have such a good college program up there, and that means they're producing young people who are of value and can do things, and all of the new things that are coming forth that I don't understand anymore, need my daughter to tell me what it is. They are going and getting jobs there. So when they have things like this, it works, and it draws businesses, it draws people back who are staying in the state, so it has an advantage.
Well, I agree.
And I think that the fact that they can have the money out there, gotten money from selling stocks and bonds or whatever they sold, I think this is a good sign.
I agree in theory, Denny. I would disagree in practice when we have bid rigging and corruption and centralized planning and deals that don't quite come to fruition. But I understand your thoughts, and I appreciate your efforts. Thank you, Denny. Thank you.